Today on Locked On Red Wings, we cover BetOnline.net's over-unders for the season, like the point totals, Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi's goals, and Alex Nedeljkovic's goals against average. And then also, we're going to answer your questions you guys submitted via Twitter. So stay tuned for today on Locked On Red Wings.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for WWJ News Radio 950. It's called The Daily J. And Scotty is the host over at Locked On Tigers, who successfully avoided a 100-loss season unless there's an epic collapse in the next half inning or whatever's left of that game. And he's also a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And before we get into it, I kind of laid it out there in the cold open. We're going to talk about the BetOnline.net over-unders in today's day. It's an off day. The Red Wings play for us as the day we're recording. It's an off day. It's Thursday. There's no games. There is a game on Friday here when you're listening to this against the Washington Capitals, but it's kind of hard to preview games when you don't know what the lineup's going to look like. So we're going to have a little bit of off-day fun, so to speak, on answering those questions, talk about those over-unders. But before we get to that, there is some news updates that have come out. The Red Wings have released 3 players from their amateur tryouts with the Detroit Red Wings, and that includes Riley Piercy and
Ivan.
And there was one more gentleman, Bertuzzi. All 3 of those guys got released from their amateur tryouts, so they are no longer there. We're down to 57 players, as well as the fact that Andrew Kopp skated today with the Detroit Red Wings. He's wearing a no-contact jersey, but Derek Lalonde said they may have to redefine what no-contact jersey means for Andrew Kopp because he's out there playing very physical, which is a good sign. Not a good sign that he's wearing a no-contact jersey being used to contact, but that he's comfortable enough using contact. So that's really all there is to that. Just the fact that he continues to get better after having that surgery on his core, and hopefully he'll be ready by the time October 14th rolls around. He's got another 2 weeks to get healthy. So let's just get right into it then, Scotty, on these over-unders. You want to start with the big one, the one that the point totals one?
Sure.
I have it. I got to pull it up here on Twitter.
84.5.
Thank you. Well, because I put them out.
All via BetOnline.net.
BetOnline.net gave these point totals. The over-under for the Red Wings this year was 84.5. 6 points better than their over-under was last year, in which the Red Wings achieved the under. So whether or not they get the over-under is the question here. I put a poll up, and thus far, this poll is still ongoing as of recording. There's 43 votes. 74% of you guys say yes, they will hit over 84.5, and 26% say under 84.5. Scotty, where do you lie? Where you think they're going to get over or under 84.5 points?
I like the over here. And so here's my problem. Okay. Here's the dilemma that I have. All right. As we talk about at the beginning of every single show, I also host Locked On Tigers. Now,
you do?
When the season was starting for the Detroit Tigers, everyone kept asking me, the Tigers, how are they going to look? We won 77 games in 2021. What's the win total going to look like for 2022? And I was like, well, we won 77 last year, and we brought in a big-name shortstop, a good starting pitcher, a new catcher, and are calling up 2 of the top prospects in the entire game of baseball. So I feel pretty confident that it's going to be,
especially playing in that division,
better than 77 wins, right? We would at least build on what we did last year, being that it's the same team plus 5 new faces that are all better than the people they were replacing. I was like, that makes sense in my head. And then this was an absolute catastrophic implosion of a season for the Tigers. So I want to take the over, and I think that that's the way to go. And that's my answer is over 84.5, but 6 points in theory. You're bringing back the people from last year's team. Plus, you're improving at quite a lot of places. You went out and had a really big free agency. We're calling up some kids, presumably. You would think that 6 points better than last year is not far-fetched. You think that would be right in the realm of possibility, but there's also a lot of other factors because this division is crazy good and all that stuff that we've been talking about all offseason. But I would like to think that given the offseason we had and given where we finished last year, just in a really like basic, simplistic mindset, like that should probably be around where we finish.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure because especially when you mentioned it there, the division is going to be a big factor. I think on
Correct.
paper this team is more than 3 wins better because that's the difference is they're projecting it 6 more points than last year's over under. And I mean, that's just I don't know, man. I think that they could definitely hit that over. But like once you get to that like 90 range, now you're flirting with the playoffs, and this division is just so stacked. I mean, you talk about it. So their over under in this one is what I say, 84.5.
Yep.
I mean, if you take the under at 84 and divide that by 2, that's 42 wins on the season. That's an over 500 hockey team, not, obviously overtime and shootout notwithstanding in those types of situations. Like if you were going to straight do regulation wins losses, that's 42 wins and 40 losses in an 82 game season. So they are projecting you to be about a 500 hockey team, which is a really good sign, especially in this division. And I think I'd be happy with them being around a 500 hockey team. I think that's a really well-placed over-under. And I'm going to lean on the side of the over as well because I think they're going to surprise people with how good they are. But I don't think it's going to be much more than that. If I was really going to truly nitpick, I'd probably put them at 86 or 88 points on the season. If I'm being realistic with my expectations, that's where I think they would fall.
Yeah, so I like obviously hockey is unique in the sense that, the overtime losses matter, but I I think that within this season and just like looking ahead that like we said, the division obviously a big deal, but when looking at the bottom half of the division, that is where you look at the top half, you go, okay, a loss is a loss, whatever. If you look at the bottom half, that's where I think the biggest difference in this season that we could make is, and I think there is probably enough points and enough. They're going to be close games, they're going to be battles, but potentially enough wins better than the bottom part of the division. I think that's the bigger thing that I look at when talking about, yes, the division is very good. Yes, it got even better, but we got better too. And I think that if you cut the division in half, top 4, bottom 4, we should have enough wins to go around there to, I think, take a step in the right direction.
Let me clarify something too, real quick, because we've been talking about being 6 points better. The Red Wings over under this year is set 6 points higher, or 7 points higher than last year's over under. They finished with 74 points, but the over under for the Red Wings last year was set at 77.5 by BetOnline.net. And now they're set at 84.5. So let's clarify that in case there's any confusion.
Difference in points of where it was set last year, not how many points.
Yeah.
It would be a 10-point improvement from last season, which I guess is also. I mean, that's pretty significant, and this division is good. So, this is far from a slam dunk thing either way, but the team also objectively got, pretty substantially, I even want to say, better than last year. So, I don't know. I go back and forth a lot, but I do think that right in that 84, 85, 86 range is probably where they'll end up.
I tend to agree with you. I think that's going to be right where it's at. When we come back, we're going to continue getting to the players more so than the overall team. We got 3 players to talk about. But first, got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, Dylan Larkin's goals above average, or goals over under. Above average is my metrics brain speaking there.
That's Brian's favorite stat. Yeah,
his over under for goals this season was set at, I believe, 28.5, and 29.5 rather. So they have him right on the cusp of being a 30-goal scorer again. And 74 votes were tallied for this one, and 74% of you guys say yes, he'll hit the over, while 26% say he's going to hit the under. Scotty, do you think Dylan Larkin's going to hit the over or the under this season on his goal total?
I like the over for this one. I really like the over for this one. I'm more confident in this one than I am the team point total as well. I really like a 30-goal season for Larkin. And I don't think there's more than anything, I think it really is just going to come down to health. I find a hard time believing with the surrounding cast that he has now and just how productive that top line, which is pretty much going to be the same, presumably, how successful he was with it last year, the big step forward, career of the year last year. I really don't see any way he stays healthy for 78, 82 games and takes a substantial step back as far as his production goes. So I'm pretty confident at that one is the over.
Yeah, I mean, health notwithstanding, I think he's a lock for over 30 goals. I mean, I think last year was Dylan Larkin. Like, that was Dylan Larkin. That wasn't a flash in the pan season for him. Now he has 2 30-goal seasons in his career, and I think that was what you can realistically expect from him. I think that's what you should expect from him year in and year out. I think a lock right there at 30 goals is right in that wheelhouse. 80 points would be perfect. I think if he can be an 80-plus point guy, that'd be right what you need from him. Tyler Bertuzzi's over-under was set at 28.5. And 64 votes tallied on that one. 44% said over 28.5, while the under says 56% voted under on that one, which that one, it seems like the people think he's not going to hit 30 again, which I kind of understand, because if you watch his play style, he's not typically like the type of player he is doesn't typically hit 30 goals, more of a consistent 20-goal score, which I think is very good for the type of value he brings. But I think people are underrating his skill too, because they look at there's almost a stereotype when you think about Tyler Bertuzzi, especially with the way he looks applies to it. He just looks like that gritty, net front presence. He's going to, force turnovers, but he's got soft hands too. Like, people are underrating his skill here. There's a reason why they called him a Marchand light. I mean, that was a compliment into his play style. I would not be surprised if he hits 30 again, but I also understand why people are taking the under. I think 25 goals for him. If he can hit 25 goals again, I think that's a very, very realistic expectation. So I would agree overall that the under is where I'm gonna land on this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if he hit over.
Yeah, I'll take the under as well. I don't think that it's under by 10. I agree with you. I think probably mid-20s is where he'll end up, but it's just the way that most of his goals are scored is like there is some inconsistency that comes with that, where like the opportunity has to present itself, because he is that, in front of the net, just kind of like bully wing that's going to wreak havoc and do a lot of his damage that way. So, that's more of like opportunity based, and taking advantage of opportunities given to you is obviously very important, but it's not as much self-imposed or self-made like goal scoring situations. It's more of like, if everything falls into place, then Bert's going to have an opportunity to put one in the back of the net, and he will, because that's what he's great at. But just, when it comes to repeating a 30-goal season that he, barely got in there at the very end of last year. Yeah,
empty net goal at the last game of the season.
Right. Yeah, I'll take the again, not dramatically, but I will take the under on that one.
And then so Alex Nedeljkovic's regular season goals against average was set at 310. His over under was set at 310. So this is one of those ones where you want to hit the under, not the over. So we had 60 votes on this one. 22% said he's going to be over 310 goals against average, while 78% say he's going to have under a 310 goals against average. And this statistic, I don't like the goals against average statistic. I'd rather have the save percentage statistic if you're using over under, because goals against average is also very much influenced by the team surrounding you, because your entire team contributes to whether or not a puck goes in the back of the net. Yes, your goalie's your last line of defense, but it has to get past all of your forwards and defenders to get there. So with Alex Nedeljkovic's goals against average, I do expect it to be below 310 this season. If it's above 310 this season, then something has gone wrong. Either Alex Nedeljkovic is just shown that he isn't who we thought he was when they traded for him, or the Red Wings, a la the Tigers, just did not take that step forward that we expected them to, and they just are still one of the worst in the league at goals per game. I think it's a confident under, and obviously it's reflected here in what the people think as well. I think it's a confident under 310. How much under, I'm not sure, but it cannot be at 310 again.
Yeah, I like the under here. I feel lame just like picking what the most popular answer is for all of them, but that's I guess what I'm ending up doing here. But I'm again, like you said, fairly confident in the under. I don't expect him to have like a 2.9, but I do expect him to be under. I think around 3 goals, maybe just under 3. Maybe just under 3, like by the end of the year. I don't know. I like you said, I'm not sure how much under. I'm not sure it's going to be a crazy amount under or anything like that, but I am fairly confident in the under 310 as well. Yeah.
And so our last odds to give you guys in this episode is also from betonline.net, and it is the odds for Norris Trophy. And it is Moritz Seider is on the list. You've seen it, right, Scotty? You've seen this list? All right.
I retweeted it. Yeah.
Right. I won't quiz you then. So Moritz Seider is listed at 9th on here. 9th best odds to win the Norris. And I don't want to sound like I'm just like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here, the adjective, but I'm happy that he's just on the list. And I know some people are going to be like, that's just a bad mentality to have, but he's on this list with like legitimate superstar defensemen and like stud defensemen, number one defenseman all across the league. And he's 9th on here.
He's played 82 NHL games and he's
already on the
in
Norris
the top 10 for
odds.
Norris. Yeah.
His odds are listed at plus 2,000. So they're very long odds to win it. And then he's 9th. He's behind Cal McCarr, who's plus 150, which
the heavy
favorite.
No one is even in the same stratosphere as him when these coming with these odds. Yeah.
Victor Hedman's at plus 800. Adam Fox is at plus 900. Roman Jossi's at plus 750.
Is second, and plus 150 is the leader. Yeah.
I don't understand how is Roman Josi got the 4th best odds. I think this graphic might be a bit messed up. I think Roman Josi is supposed to be number 2 on here because he's got plus 750 odds. I think the graphic got a little messed up here.
I mean, so still.
It goes McCarr 150, Josi 750, Hedman 800, Fox 900. You got, man, he doesn't definitely have the worst odds, but he's up there with guys like Heiskanen, McAvoy, Hughes. It's interesting that McAvoy's on here. He's starting the season injured, so it's going to be really hard for him, I think, you have to absolutely dominate to get it. But would you take that bet at plus 2,000? You just throw a little bit of money on there just for fun.
Throw a nice little $5 on there.
It's like the Calder thing, right? You go into the season, you like put a little $5 on there, and by the end of the season, by the end of the season, Seider was minus odds for Calder, which is insane.
Yeah,
like so heavily favored that he had minus odds. But yeah, I mean, just having Moritz Seider on there is pretty cool to see. I think he's going to have an absolute fantastic season this year, and I think he is going to get thrown a couple of Norris votes. But for him to win the Norris this season, he would have to be. I don't know what he would have to accomplish, honestly, because I feel like with the NHL going so much more towards offensive defensemen.
Yeah, he would have to put up some offensive numbers while still, being as good as he is defensively.
I mean, he put up 50 points last year while also being a stud on the back end. Like, what more? He's such a well-balanced offensive end. He's just a well-rounded defenseman on both ends. I don't know what a guy like him is going to have to do to be like, I deserve the Norris over Cal McCarr is going to put up like 80 plus points. That's
Right.
that's the tough part.
He's going to put up 83 as a D-man, and you're just going to go, all right, well.
So I think that he's Norris Trophy caliber, but when it comes to voting, who knows? But
It might take him a couple of years to really get
Yeah.
that respect in the voting.
Yeah, I think he'll get a vote or two this year if he goes out and has a season like he did this past year.
Yeah,
But I don't think
I
it'll
agree.
be like first place votes. It might be fourth or fifth.
Yeah.
But he's definitely on the path to it. When we come back, we're going to get to your guys' questions that you added us on Twitter and do our best to answer them. Awkward transition. I did well yesterday, but when we come back, segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're going to get to your guys' questions that you sent us. I got to scroll down on the Twitter notifications here, so give me a second here.
The Red Wings are a hockey team.
They sure are a hockey team, aren't they, Scotty?
Yep. They are
Certainly.
based in the city of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
They wear red.
So I got one.
White.
We're good. So this one comes from @FantasyFB Steve on Twitter. And this one actually we kind of talked about it a little bit yesterday. It goes, do you guys think Soderblom has a chance to make the Wings this year? Funny he would say that because I'm pretty sure I just posted a highlight on Twitter answering that very question from our conversation yesterday after he had a great game against the Chicago Blackhawks. And I think he does. I don't know if it's a big chance, but I mean, they're giving him top 6 minutes in the preseason. Management requested it. Lalonde has stated how well he has played. And we talked about it yesterday, but this is very much a year where the best players are going to get roster spots, and it doesn't matter how long you've been in the league, how old you are. I mean, if he's outperforming guys like Giovanni Smith or Adam Ernie or Pew Suter, he'll get a position. Not saying that those are the guys that he will outperform, but just using those as an example. I think he's definitely making a case for it, but I think he still has a better chance of starting in Grand Rapids. I think he has a shot at making the Red Wings, but I think it's like 25%. It could increase as the preseason goes on, but I think they're going to want him to start in Grand Rapids unless he just balls out like Raymond did last year.
Yeah, so that's you literally took like everything I was going to say pretty much. I mean, like I think that it's under 50%, and honestly, I was thinking of what percentage I would have given it before you said yours, and I was going to go 20. So I think like and again, that's on, Thursday, September 29th is when we're recording this. Like it could obviously get better and improve as the preseason goes on. Like who knows what's going to happen in the last 6 games here, but I think right now it's probably still slightly more likely that he ends up in Grand Rapids. Now, if we want to talk odds that he's playing in a winged wheel at any point this season, I'd probably put that over 50.
Yeah, I think
But,
so.
That includes end of the season, maybe we're out of contention, call up stuff for a few games, whatever. But yeah, I think starting the season, opening night, I would say it's probably still more likely he doesn't than he does. But the odds are certainly bigger than they were before camp in my head. Like the odds that I thought that number has certainly grown a ton in the last week and could continue for the last week here of the preseason.
So this question comes from @PsychoDadJess2 on Twitter. Asks a couple of questions here actually in this tweet. The first one is, do you see Lindstrom, Giovanni Smith, and Joe Veleno in the AHL? That's a really tough one. That is a really tough question because with the exception of Joe Veleno, Lindstrom and Smith would have to pass through waivers. And if you pass Lindstrom through waivers, I bet he gets picked up. I don't know about Giovanni Smith, but I definitely see Lindstrom getting picked up if you pass him through waivers. But again, like I just said with Soderblom, if Lindstrom is having a subpar preseason, like it kind of looks like he is, and there's other defensemen out there like Biaka Batuka or Simon Edvinsson, who looks like they're ready for an NHL level, not that Biaka Batuka will be ready, but just using those guys as an example, then they absolutely will waive him. I think that it's going to come down to Yzerman's going to want the best players on this team. Lalonde's going to want the best players on this team. And just because you're waiver eligible doesn't mean you won't get sent down. I could definitely see Veleno just because he's waiver exempt getting sent down to start the season. If it comes down to they need to cut a player and there's guys that they have to go through waivers and it's a tough race, and that could be the deciding factor. But if Joe Veleno's outplaying other guys, they're not going to send Joe Veleno down just because he's waiver exempt. It'd have to be like they're neck and neck, and that's the deciding factor.
Yeah, I agree, and it is definitely a factor, right?
Yeah.
Like undeniably, the waiver exempt thing is definitely a factor for Veleno, but yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth on Veleno a lot for
Me
this
too.
season. I think he's like right in that in between kind of area of
Well,
everything. And so he'll definitely be, if a forward goes down early, he will certainly be like first person up and first person given an opportunity to fill in that void if he starts off in Grand Rapids. But just be again because of talent and the waiver exempt thing. But I don't know. I go back and forth a lot with
I
him.
guess to answer the question, like give a definitive answer, I would say no to Lindstrom and then yes to Smith and Veleno to being in the AHL this season. That's just that if I had to give an answer right here, right now.
I think I'd agree with that.
Okay. Then the second one was do Zadina, Perron, Vrana, and Kubalik score 80 plus points outside of the top line? No. No, not
Each?
all of them. Each. All
Yeah.
of them.
I
Not
mean, no.
happening. You would
Right.
have a Stanley Cup caliber team if all of those guys had 80 plus points
Yeah,
this
that's
season.
steep for sure.
I could see Verana doing it, but I don't think Zadina's doing it. I don't think Perron's doing it. I don't think Kubalik's doing it. I think for Zadina and Perron, you want them to be somewhere in the 50-point range. Or 40 points, let's say 40 points for Zadina. Temper expectations. Perron, 50-point range.
If Zadina's point total starts with a 5,
Yeah.
that's
You're,
a very successful
that's a
season.
breakout year for him.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're looking at that's a 20-20 split, 20 goals, 20 assists. That's a great season
Right.
for Zadina. The best season he would have had up until this point. Perron, I think, in the mid 50s is right along pace
That's
with
like
his career average.
consistent too,
It's
with just like
consistent.
what he's done. Yeah.
I could see Verana getting over 80 points if I'm being honest, but he would have to have it would have to be obviously it'd be the best year of his career, but I would probably put him more in the 60 points if I'm being
Yeah, me
honest.
too. But I mean, like he's such a wild card because we still have yet to really see him play a significant amount of time. I mean, if he does the production, right? If he keeps up the production that he does in these short stints when he's healthy, then he's going to be a 90-point scorer.
Yeah.
But we need to see what he can do over a full NHL season relatively healthy. So I think that's the biggest thing for him. But yeah, I don't know if I really expect any of those dudes to hit 80, but
No.
I do think that if all of them have more than 45, I mean, that's a massive win.
Oh God, that you'd have that's your middle six right there for the most part.
Yeah, that
Zadina,
would be
Perron, Vrana, and Kubalik. That's
huge,
for your middle
very
six.
successful season. I think if everybody you just named had like 45 or more.
And obviously all the point totals we're naming off are on the high end of expectations. Like
For
if they
sure,
all
yeah.
had the bet, they're all had the best case scenario seasons for themselves. I think that's where they land. I think Zadina in the 40s would be best case. Perron in the 50s would be best case. Vrana in the 60s would be best case. Kubalik probably, I would say,
and best case
40.
just isn't going to happen for everybody.
No.
So like one of these dudes is going to put up whatever 33, and we're just going to be looking at the end of the year
and even if Kubalik comes in and is 33 and it's 20 goals and 13 assists, that's still a step up over his last two seasons. So
and on the third 20 goal scorer on your third line that can play power play too, that's a successful season. Yeah, 80 is just a lot.
I think people just this that answers the question, but now I kind of want to get off into a little tangent. I think a lot of people have this expectation that anything under 80 points isn't a good season for a forward, and that's just not true. And I'm not calling you out, Jesse. I'm just talking about in the greater scheme of things. A 30-point season, as you just said, Scotty, from a third liner is a phenomenal season. That's great offensive production from your third line.
For real.
And guys who are in the 50s and 60-point ranges, those are bona fide, those are guys you paid good money to have on your team. Not like all-star caliber, $10 million a year, but that's a guy you're going to give $5 million a year to. Andrew Kopp is a perfect example of how much did we just pay him?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that's a guy whose career best is in the 50-point range. So have a forward who's over 50 points is very good, but 30 to 40 range is also good too for a middle six forward. It's very rare to have guys on your team who score over 80 points a season. Guys who score over 80 points a season are like one of the lead guys on your team. And that's why, again, I'm emphasizing why Moritz Seider getting 50 points last year in his rookie season makes him so goddamn impressive. Because that was as a defenseman. Absolutely. So there's very few players in the league that are going to score over 80 points consistently year to year. So, I mean, if Larkin can get over 80 points, that's a great year. I don't think Larkin is like a elite superstar talent. He's not Connor McDavid, so don't go out there expecting him to get 95 to 100 points. Not saying that he can't break the 90s if he has a career year, but I would expect him to score anywhere between 75 and 85 points realistically, and that's damn good. That's a number one center right there. There's just so few centers in the league, forwards in the league that are going to be, 95 to 105 point range. Those guys are the top echelon of players in the league. That's just, I'm going to get off my, what do they call it?
Soapbox.
My soapbox now, but that's just where my thoughts are on that.
Yeah. I mean, like you're right. Yeah.
Okay. That does it. Any final thoughts, buddy?
We ball.
We absolutely ball. We'll be back on Monday, recapping the weekend's games again. Wings play the Washington Capitals at home tonight, by the time you're listening to this. I do not believe it's going to be streamed on Bally or on the radio, so you might have to go to DetroitRedWings.com like you did for the first game against Pittsburgh. But yes, they play the Washington Capitals tonight at Little Caesars Arena. We'll be back on Monday. Same time, same place. It's your team.
BetOnline.
Every day.
Every day.